Ashley Parker, my colleague Joe Scarborough went on an epic rant against Republican inaction. And I admired it so much. I'm going to play some of it later in the program. But I have a totally different view on this. Republicans want to stand with Donald Trump on inciting an insurrection. Knock yourself out. You will make the job of burning the party to the ground faster and easier. Because here's what was in this bulletin. Let me read this one more time. Ideologically, these are domestic terror threats. This is a description of the domestic terror threat today in our entire country. Quote, ideologically motivated, violent extremists with objections to the exercise of government authority and the presidential transition. It's Donald Trump's freaking mission statement for the last 3 months of his presidency. He is the clear and present danger. He is the symbol of everything we're being warned about today.
Well, one thing that was fascinating about the Republican response, especially to the attack on the Capitol, was there was a lot of shock and surprise that this had happened. But again, as anyone who has been paying attention or covering Donald Trump, as I have, this very much felt like a natural, logical culmination of Trumpism. I'll just go back very briefly to 2015. He was not even president. He was a candidate. I was out on the campaign trail covering him, and I did two things. One is I called my editors and I said, we need to have a reporter at every single Trump event because pretty soon things are going to get violent and we're going to want to have someone there on the ground to cover it. And I wrote a story about that, about the violence at Trump rallies, about these rallies and moments that felt like they were teetering on the brink of a kind of mosh pit explosion of violence with white supremacists in the crowd then. And so this is something that the president, of course, as you mentioned, he egged on those angry supporters on January 6th, but he's been egging them on since he even took power. And now we're seeing the continuation of it in members of the Republican Party who some overtly, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, there was just news today that before becoming a member of Congress, she advocated on social media for violence and even sort of the execution of Democrats. That's probably the most extreme, to this really intra-Republican Party fight of if they even feel comfortable censoring Trump, voting to impeach him, or if they're still worried about the wrath of him and his supporters.
I want to read some more of this, Ashley, because your reporting chronicled these as the issues most important and most on the mind and most often communicated from Donald Trump's Twitter feed before he was kicked off. These ideologically motivated violent extremists also feel perceived grievances fueled by false narratives. I mean, this really is a case where the lies uttered by Donald Trump, amplified by his allies on Fox News and OWN and everywhere else that his media sycophants project their messages, now put all of our lives at risk. It's a stunning culmination of the role of disinformation from Russia in his election in 2016 to the role of disinformation after his defeat in bringing us to the brink of I think, a practically unprecedented threat of domestic terrorism based on political violence.
Well, you mentioned that sense of grievance that his supporters feel, and that's something also that is fueled by this president. If you sort of step back objectively, Donald Trump is one of the luckiest men alive. He has, been bankrupt and somehow convinced everyone that he is the smartest businessman in the world who understands the art of the deal. He'd never run for political office before, and he becomes president of the United States. That's a lucky guy. But he has created sort of this cult of victimhood around himself, which taps into a sense of grievance that his supporters feel. And when you marry that with, quite frankly, dangerous disinformation and conspiracy theories, it creates this basically explosion that we saw, and that, as this warning just shown, we're potentially waiting to see again, although, of course, we hope not.
Director Brennan, I want to play you President Biden, who described this as domestic terrorism days ago, just days after the insurrection. Let's play that and talk about it on the other side.
What we witnessed yesterday was not dissent. It was not disorder. It was not protest. It was chaos. They weren't protesters. Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists, domestic terrorists. It's that basic. It's that simple.
So this country was attacked by domestic terrorists on January 6th. When this country was attacked by Islamic terrorists on September 11th, everything changed. All the U.S. senators went to the steps of the Capitol and I think sang Amazing Grace the first time they went back to the Capitol. By a vote of 98-0, they passed the Patriot Act, and we can debate till the end of time whether those were the right policies. But the truth was everyone decided we needed new policies, and we changed the way we protect the homeland. Since this attack by who President Biden called domestic terrorists, nothing has changed. In fact, more than 100 House Republicans and I think about 7 Senate Republicans went on to vote based on the Trump lie to invalidate the result of the election. Are you optimistic that we have the will to take on this terrorism threat the way we did the threat after 9/11?
Well, I'm optimistic that President Biden and Vice President Harris do, and that the executive branch is no longer going to be looking at these issues through a political lens, because I do believe a bulletin that was just issued should have been issued before the January 6th event. And so, therefore, the al-Qaeda attacks in 9/11 were emanating from abroad. This domestic threat is much more dangerous. It's already within our midst. And it's much more difficult then for the officials to be able to uproot those who are dedicated to carrying out violent attacks. I'm hopeful, again, that the executive branch under President Biden is going to move in the right direction. I'm confident it will. It's a question about whether or not the members of Congress will be able to unify against what is this very vitriolic and hateful ideology, which is dedicated to using violence to go against appropriate government authority.
Frank Figliuzzi, I know you have a lot of thoughts and ideas on this. I want to hear all of them. I want to play some sound, though, from an interview my friend Chris Hayes did last night with Congressman Jeffries, and just add that to what you respond to here. Let's watch.
This is something that unfolded on January 6th, directed at a family member of mine. This individual apparently had secured a phone number, secured an address, made it appear as though they were prepared to proceed violently, either at the address of my family member and or my own home address at the same time that the Capitol was being attacked. The most important thing here, Chris, is that what was chilling in the message that was received is that this individual said, "Stop telling lies. Biden did not win. Yeah. He will not be president." And so he was radicalized by the big lie that Donald Trump told, and that has been supported by so many Republicans in the House and the Senate.
Frank, this is a real-time threat against a family member of a sitting member of Congress who was motivated by the lie. Said, quote, "He will not be president. Biden did not win." Believe Donald Trump on that.
Yeah, people who are radicalized buy a lie. They buy into a false narrative, and they buy it hook, line, and sinker and become true believers. But let's compare and contrast Hakeem Jeffries with some of the other colleagues in the House and the Senate. Hakeem Jeffries is doing the right thing for the national interest in the face of extreme threats of violence to himself and his family. Yet he does what's in the national interest. Compare and contrast that to members of the House and Senate who have decided to continue being radicalizers and inciters by aligning with the radicalizer in chief that was the president, doing what's in their self-interest politically rather than what's in their national interest. And I say this about the Senate. Where else have you seen a trial at any level, in any courthouse, where the jury is composed of both victims of the crime, those senators whose lives were threatened on the day of the insurrection, and perpetrators, those who aided and abetted and enabled and facilitated the crime? That's your jury for impeachment in the trial. Do we expect that to be hopeful? Do we expect those people with their track record of not doing the right thing to suddenly do the right thing? So